It's January 1st and you're convinced this year will be different. You're going to lose weight, exercise daily, read more books, save money, learn a new language, quit bad habits, and finally become the person you know you're capable of being. You feel energized, motivated, unstoppable. By January 15th, the gym membership sits unused. By February, you've ordered takeout 4 nights this week. By March, you can't even remember what resolution you made. And somewhere deep inside, a familiar voice whispers that you lack discipline, that you're weak, that you'll never change. But what if the problem isn't you at all? What if everything you've been taught about New Year's resolutions is psychologically backwards? What if the very way resolutions are constructed sets you up for failure before you even begin? Today we're exploring why 92% of people fail to keep their New Year's resolutions, and why the 8% who succeed aren't doing what you think they're doing. This isn't about motivation or willpower. It's about understanding how change actually works in the human brain. The first problem starts with how we think about January 1st. There's something psychologically seductive about clean starts and fresh beginnings. Psychologists call this the fresh start effect. Temporal landmarks like New Year's Day create the feeling that you're starting from zero, that the past doesn't count, that this time everything will be different. And that feeling is powerful. It floods your brain with motivation and possibility. But motivation is an emotion, and like all emotions, it's temporary. The fresh start effect gives you a psychological high that lasts days or maybe weeks. Then normal life returns. The contexts that shaped your old behaviors are still there. The stresses that drove your bad habits haven't changed. The environment that made unhealthy choices easy is exactly the same. But now the motivational high has worn off, and you're left trying to maintain new behaviors through sheer force of will in circumstances specifically designed to make those behaviors difficult. This is where most resolutions die. People treat willpower like it's an unlimited resource, something you either have or don't have. But decades of research by psychologist Roy Baumeister has shown that willpower functions more like a muscle that gets exhausted with use. He calls this ego depletion. Every decision you make, every temptation you resist, every impulse you control throughout the day depletes your willpower reserves. By evening, when you've already navigated a stressful day and made dozens of decisions, your willpower tank is empty. This is precisely when your brain defaults to old automatic behaviors, the ones that don't require willpower because they've been practiced so many times they're now habits running on autopilot. So you skip the workout you planned. You eat the junk food you swore you'd avoid. Not because you're weak, but because you've depleted your mental resources and your brain is taking the path of least resistance. The people who succeed with resolutions understand something crucial. They don't rely on willpower. They redesign their environment so the right choice becomes the easy choice. If you want to eat healthier, willpower says resist the cookies in your pantry. Environmental design says don't buy the cookies in the first place. If you want to exercise in the morning, willpower says force yourself out of bed. Environmental design says put your workout clothes next to your bed so the friction to start is minimal. Psychologist Kurt Lewin developed field theory, which explains that behavior is a function of both the person and their environment. Most people focus entirely on changing themselves while ignoring the environment that shaped their behavior. Then they wonder why change feels impossible. But there's an even deeper problem with how most people set resolutions. They focus on outcomes instead of identity. You say, I want to lose 20 pounds or I want to run a marathon. These are outcome goals. And outcome goals have a psychological weakness. They're future-focused, which means they require you to suffer now for a reward later. Your brain isn't wired to find that compelling. Psychologist James Clear, who studies habit formation, argues that lasting change comes from identity-based goals instead. Rather than "I want to lose weight," the question becomes, what kind of person do I want to be? Someone who values their health. Someone who moves their body daily. When you shift from outcome to identity, every small action becomes evidence for the type of person you're becoming. Each healthy meal isn't just a step toward losing 20 pounds. It's proof that you're someone who takes care of their body. This shift is psychologically powerful because identity is how you see yourself, and humans have a deep need for internal consistency. When you believe you're a healthy person, behaviors that contradict that identity create cognitive dissonance, and your brain works to resolve that by aligning your actions with your identity. Most resolutions also fail because they're too ambitious and too vague. Psychologist Edwin Locke spent decades researching goal setting and discovered that specific, challenging goals lead to higher performance than vague ones. But there's a critical qualifier. The goals must be attainable. When you set a resolution like exercise every day or completely quit sugar, you've created a standard so high that the first slip feels like total failure. And this is where all-or-nothing thinking destroys progress. You miss one workout and think, "I've already broken my resolution, so what's the point?" This psychological pattern treats any deviation from perfection as complete failure. It ignores the reality that change is messy and full of setbacks. The people who sustain change don't think in all-or-nothing terms. They expect imperfection. When they slip, they see it as data, not disaster. There's also the issue of why you're making the resolution in the first place. Many people choose goals based on what they think they should want rather than what they actually want. You resolve to wake up at 5 in the morning because productivity culture says that's what successful people do. But you're not a morning person and never have been. So you're trying to force yourself into a pattern that fights your natural rhythms. Psychologist Carl Rogers emphasized the importance of congruence, alignment between your true self and the self you present to the world. When your goals come from external shoulds rather than internal values, you're creating incongruence. And incongruence is psychologically exhausting to maintain. Eventually, your authentic self reasserts itself and the behavior collapses. Another reason resolutions fail is the absence of a system. You have a goal but no process. Goals are the results you want to achieve. Systems are the processes that lead to those results. Most people focus entirely on the goal. They imagine the end result and that vision feels good. But they haven't built the daily system that would actually get them there. They haven't answered the practical questions. What time will I do this? What will I do when obstacles appear? How will I track progress? Without a system, the goal remains a fantasy that motivation can't sustain. Psychologist B.J. Fogg, who studies behavior change at Stanford, developed a model showing that behavior happens when motivation, ability, and a prompt converge at the same moment. Most resolutions rely entirely on motivation while ignoring ability and prompts. You're highly motivated on January 1st, but the behavior you're trying to adopt is difficult and there's no prompt triggering it. As motivation fades, the behavior stops. Fogg's research shows that making behaviors tiny and attaching them to existing prompts is far more effective than relying on motivation. Want to start flossing? Don't resolve to floss perfectly every night. Start by flossing one tooth after you brush. The behavior is so small it requires almost no motivation. Over time, that tiny behavior expands naturally because you've built the neural pathway. Social factors also determine whether resolutions succeed or fail. Humans are deeply social creatures. We mirror the behaviors of people around us, often without realizing it. If everyone in your social circle overeats and avoids exercise, maintaining a resolution that goes against group norms requires enormous psychological energy. You're not just changing your behavior. You're risking social rejection. This is why public commitment and accountability can help. When you tell others about your goal, you've created social stakes. But this only works if the people you're accountable to actually support the change. Then there's the timeline problem. Most resolutions are framed as annual goals. But a year is simultaneously too long and too short. Too long because it's hard to maintain focus over 12 months without immediate results. Too short because real transformation often takes longer than a year to solidify. Psychologist Angela Duckworth, who studies grit, found that long-term success requires sustained persistence over years, not months. The people who make lasting changes don't think in terms of New Year's resolutions. They think in terms of lifestyle redesign and long-term systems. They understand that consistency is built through years of practice, not a burst of January enthusiasm. Perhaps the most fundamental reason resolutions fail is that they're often trying to address symptoms rather than root causes. You resolve to stop emotional eating, but you haven't addressed the anxiety driving you to food for comfort. You resolve to stop procrastinating, but you haven't examined the perfectionism or fear of failure underneath the avoidance. Surface-level behavior change without addressing underlying psychological patterns is like putting a band-aid on a wound that needs stitches. Real change often requires uncomfortable self-examination. What purpose does this behavior serve? What need is it meeting? What am I avoiding by staying the same? These questions are harder than making a resolution, which is why most people skip them. The path to change that actually lasts doesn't start on January 1st with a list of ambitious resolutions. It starts with honest self-assessment. What do I actually want versus what do I think I should want? What environmental factors are maintaining my current behaviors? What tiny change could I make that's so small I could do it even on my worst day? What systems can I build to make the desired behavior automatic? How will I respond with self-compassion when I inevitably slip? These questions don't create the dopamine rush of a fresh start, but they create the foundation for sustainable transformation. Change doesn't require perfection or superhuman willpower. It requires understanding how your psychology actually works and designing your life accordingly. The people who succeed aren't stronger or more disciplined than you. They've just stopped fighting against how human brains function and started working with it instead. So this year, before you write another resolution destined to fail by February, ask yourself a different question. Not what do I want to achieve, but who do I want to become? And what's the smallest step I can take today that's evidence for that identity? Start there. Build slowly. Be patient with yourself. Real change isn't dramatic. It's the accumulation of tiny decisions made consistently over time. That transformation doesn't happen because of a resolution. It happens because you built systems, changed your environment, aligned your goals with your values, and gave yourself permission to be imperfect while still moving forward. If this changed how you think about New Year's resolutions, share it with someone struggling with the same cycle. And subscribe for more psychology content that helps you understand why you do what you do.